Okay, so as many of you have already been interacting with me and have followed up on a lot of social media, that I was quite actively involved and busy in Human Proteome Organization meeting, which recently finished in Adelaide, and there are some actually follow-up activity which I am involved. So I'm not available right now to continue further with this live session. I hope today you had already good understanding for various concepts in the mass spectrometry based proteomics. If you have some specific question right now, my TA would like to address that. If you still have certain doubts which you'd like me to clarify, please feel free to email me, which I can either respond to you directly, or I'll be happy to have a Skype session with any one of you one-to-one as well. If not, then we'll take some of those questions also forward in the next live session. So stay tuned till the next live session, and we'll be in touch. Thank you. So now let's talk about the same workflow which we're talking, how to proceed with the shotgun proteomics with this workflow. So your peptides are now ready, you have quantified the peptides. And after quantification, now you want to proceed for the separation in the liquid chromatography. So that's where the nano-LC will come into the play. And because you don't have too much peptides, you don't want to use UHPLC and waste your solution. So a good idea to try out nano-LC. And here you can load just for a typical experiment 1 to 2 microgram of peptide is good enough to give you sufficient spectra. So what is shown here is the the configuration, which I will actually talk more in detail. And so ideally what we are doing, we are going to your peptide is going to bind to the C18 column, reverse phase column, and then you are going to add buffer A and B, and you are going to use different gradient of acetonitrile and formic acid. This gradient can be different. I think most of the time people use 5% to 80% acetonitrile with 0.1% formic acid. But this is not the number. I think one could always play with these numbers according to the sample and try to change the gradient according to the requirements. And then while you are doing that, you can, we will show you again in the nano-LC more detail, but this is what you want to look for, the A pump, B pump, and S pump. And you are looking at whether the solvents are moving properly, how much is the pressure created, what is the bar for pressure. You will set up a gradient and you will see at which step the things are moved. After doing the entire experiment, what you want to see, the gradient, let's say this is set up for 120 minutes and other gradient for 240 minutes. You are looking at, you want to look at that what gradient condition works best for your given sample. So it means that you want to see always a gradient which is Gaussian, where you are starting to from the baseline, no contaminants coming from the previous sample. Most of your peptides start looking out slowly, then they are coming out totally, and then you want to wash them off. So you want to see a good Gaussian pattern, and depending on the sample complexity, you can run them 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. So the gradient condition has to be optimized as per the sample requirements, and you want to achieve the maximum peptides to dilute out slowly over the time period, not all at the same time. So we have a sample running live here, which is in this case here, it is a live run. Actually, it is not the great, sample coming in because the pattern is not so Gaussian. We'd like to see something more coming up here and then coming down slowly. But for this long run, you can see many peptides started coming in the very beginning, and then they are separated well over the time period, and now they are coming off. So in this manner, this is what you'd like to see, but this was not for a demo, it was a live experiment run. So what we will do now, we will talk more about how you can use this nano-LC. Idea is that once you got your peptide in the solution form, you will now take this instrument. Maybe we will take another nano-LC here, and you would like to inject your sample, right? So this is a place where you will, you want to keep your samples, and idea is that you can go as many, almost 96 samples possible for injection. So So you need to have the peptides in a very concentrated form, right? Because you want to know both the quantity, how much you have, and the volume which is specified, which you want to inject. So only few nanoliter volume which you want to, or microliter volume which you want to inject here. So once you inject your peptides in these tubes here, I think your manual job is almost done. The rest of the things you can actually operate there in the software. So we will close this, keep it back. And now one could, just set up the gradients and the parameters for the liquid chromatography LC part. So I'll just go back to my PPT and show you where we are on this step. I'll go back a little bit. So we are here. So after your peptides are ready, then we are proceeding for peptide separation using liquid chromatography. And what we are talking about the nano LC, nano liquid chromatography. So let's now have a little bit demo of the nano LC and some of the parameters, where one of the TAs, Vipin, will talk to you about nano LC.
So here now you can see sir already explained about the pump A and then pump B. So respectively you can see there is solution A which having like 0.1% FM. There is another solution which is solvent B which is 80% ACN and 0.1% FM. And similarly you can see there is a pump A and then pump B which basically monitor the flow of solution solvent A and solvent B. Now here you can see pump S. So here already we have seen the sample, right? So the pump S will monitor the flow of your samples. Now if you want to inject 10 microliter, 4 microliter, so it will be monitored through the pump S. There is a pump W is there also which monitor the waste of sample. Like there sometimes you have to preparate the column, you have to wash the column, then it will go through the waste. Now here, through this, now you can see these tubes. Now here this one tube you can see. So this is coming through the nano LC. And then it will go through this. This is a one column. So here you can see there are two columns. One is this one pre-column and second is analytical column. So the main function of pre-column is to dissolve your sample, cleaning of your sample. If there is anything contaminated, so which will go through from here to and then it will go into waste. You can see this tube, which will go in waste. Now once the sample will be clean and it will bind into pre-column, then you are applying the different gradient of ACN. Once we apply the gradient, then it will go through this column, is an analytical column, and then we will go to an ionization source. Now here your peptides will start to ionize. Now here we are applying voltage around 1.9 kV, which apply high voltage due to which your peptide will start to positively charge, and then there you can see here now. So here the peptide is coming through this column, and this is ITC tube, ion transfer tube. Now here this peptide is getting highly charged and ionized and then going into the mass spec. Now in this way, this is parameter. Now if you want to see exact like how the parameters you can see here. If I show you this workflow, now it is shown. So this is the gradient of for nano LC. Now here you can set up the accordingly you can change the gradient if you want to put for 60 minutes or 120 minutes accordingly you can change here. Then so initially in starting we are keeping 3%, then we are increasing slowly 25, 35 and 95. Now here we are equilibrating the column like before loading any sample. For loading any samples we have to equilibrate the column, both column, pre-column or analytical column. So here we are doing like we are putting 10 microliter for the pre-column equilibration and then 10 microliter for the analytical column equilibration. So once it is be done equilibration, then our sample will start to load and then will start to fractionate and then it will go into mass spec. So in this way, liquid chromatography will be used for your reduce the sample complexity and then slowly it will go into mass spec and then our mass spec can identify those ionized peptides or fragmented peptides.
Alright, so we are giving a flavor. Of course, there is a lot one could do on this to obtain good settings, right? We are just giving you a flavor that how you can walk through the entire workflow. So now let's move on to the next part after the LC is done. So now these, you have briefly already seen that now these peptides are getting ionized, and we have Electrospray ionization for doing that. uh, what happens, theoretically here that, all the solutions are coming out and a very high voltage is applied on the capillary tip. And because of the pressure differential and the charge differential, now all the peptides should move inside the mass spectrometer. So this is where now various type of mass spectrometer configurations comes. And what we are showing you is one of the mass spectrometer, which is Orbitrap. But you can always have quadruple time of flight. Many other good mass spectrometers are available as well. So how this Orbitrap technology works, what we are looking at right now is essentially we are talking in front of this instrument, which is again, this from outside just looks like black box. What is we have is a tribrid mass spectrometer, which we got in some more detail yesterday regarding how Orbitrap technology works. But idea here is that we have three different type of mass analyzers. So first the ionization source is the ESI, and mass analyzers are three, starting from the quadrupoles, and then we have the Orbitrap and ion trap. So I'll show this slide again. So here we have this, quadrupole, then we have Orbitrap, and we have ion trap. So you can utilize the properties of three different types of mass analyzers here, and you can also operate with both CID, HTD, PTD, variety of collision energy you can apply for different applications. So yesterday, Dr. Saravanan, if you attended the session, he talked about looking at the PTMs and how you can make use of HTD. So again, depending on if you're doing more quantitative proteomics, looking at IPAC or TMC kind of workflow, you can use about the different type of energies, or you can use ETD if you are looking at more of the sophisticated PTM modifications. So depending on what kind of application you have, you can choose the different collision cells. But broadly, what we are talking is something which is happening inside this particular mass spectrometer, and depending on various mass analyzers which are linked to the ionization source, the instruments can give various different properties. So in case of multi-top, we will have let's say only one mass analyzer is linked with the electrospray with the ionization source, which is multi. Now if you have two mass analyzers like multi-top, then you have a tandem MS configuration. Or in this case, let's say we have this particular instrument, which is the Q-schedule. In this one, we have again two different type of mass analyzers, quadrupoles and Orbitrap. Now, if you have, in the fusion, you got three different mass analyzers that is known as tribrid. So these kind of instrumentations can be very useful for doing MS analysis or even MSN analysis, and which can give you a detailed idea for the peptide sequences of a given protein, which is not possible if you just do MS1 analysis or only MS analysis. So let's continue with more of the basic workflow again on the PPT. So once you have reached here to the mass spectrometer, we have shown you the lab session briefly, and this is what you all want to see, that the chromatograms, how peptides are coming out. So after all your hard work, you want to look at how good the chromatograms are, how good the spectrum looks like, and I'd like to cover briefly so this is the more detailed view of the chromatograms. As I was talking, that you want to have a good resolution of the entire data. You want to have good separation of all the peptides. So good idea that the gradient for the liquid chromatography should be set up in such a way that the things are all very slowly coming out, and then all the peptides are emitted out from the column. Nothing is bound over there. You don't want to carry over to the next sample. So a Gaussian pattern is what one would like to achieve if you are looking at multiple, trying to optimize the LC conditions. So this is how the chromatogram looks like for the data coming out of the instruments. Two of the chromatograms shown here. Now what happens in the back end, which you want to know the basic level, that when you are applying these collision energy, the CID or SED, this is a peptide polypeptide chain, and the backbone of the polypeptides. This is the peptide bond CONH. With the collision energy, now you are breaking this bond, and on the amino terminal region, the ions is retained. That is known as the B ion, and the carboxy terminal series, what it retains the ion, that is known as the Y ion. So after fragmentation, you are generating the B ion and the Y ion series complementary, but closer to the amino terminal, those are known as the B1, and subsequently B2, B3, B4 further off, and closer from the carboxy terminal, Y1, subsequently Y2, Y3, Y4 series. So now if I go back to this particular spectrum, you see a couple of Y ions and B ions, and those will help you to look at the data quality. So there's a lot one could actually analyze looking at the spectrum, these data. Probably it may not be covered in today's session. We will walk you through some more detail for the data analysis workflows. But there are many softwares available from which you can analyze the data. Especially the open access mascot is very good. It's a good way to start. Probably the next time to do, we will show you at least a brief hands-on data analysis part directly from one of the commercial software which we have in the Proteome Discoverer, that how you can process the data from that using the same workflow which we're talking, where you have obtained so far the.
So as you saw, that it is very important to get a good chromatogram. So your chromatogram is actually a reflection of how good or bad the sample is, and preliminary you can get an idea whether the run has happened properly or not. So now, then once when you get the chromatogram, what do you do with it? So we run samples in a gradient of around 240 minutes, which is like roughly around 3.5 hours and 4 hours. So after that, every sample will have a chromatogram like this, and you will get a .raw file. So now our first step is to interpret the chromatogram and then perform protein identification. So each spike that you see represents thousands of peptides that are flying off at a very high speed. And now we need to go ahead and do the annotation of these. So we can do this using several openly available software like MaxFont. Also in our lab, I will show you how I have identified my research problems using mass spectrometers using Proteome Discoverer. So in brief, we will export these .raw files, and then we would go ahead and do the annotation. So for example, if you have, in this case, this is I'm presenting my work as a case study. So in this case, I had few different grades of cancer patients, that is grade 1, grade 2 and grade 3 cancer patients. So these cancer patients, we have performed proteomic profile of them, and we wanted to see that is there any biomarker that is present or that is differentially expressed among the different grades of tumor. So first step is to import the spectra or the chromatogram and the .raw file into the software, which we have already done. Now we have also assigned the different grades of the tumor that you can see here, that we have given the grades, and now we will set up the workflow. So this again is a very, the software allows you to select different parameters. Like you can definitely go for which search engines you want to use. So Sequence HT, you can use Sequence HT, and you can also put your mass tolerance. In this case, we have put a mass tolerance of 10 ppm. So these are the parameters that, as per your question, you can definitely play with. Also, if you want to analyze, like you want to have other databases plugged in, so that also you can do. You can use SwissProt, you can use Mascot, and you can also annotate your proteins. This will give you many large number of hits. And you can also see that we have an option of putting the contaminants database as well. So whenever you are running a sample, so there are abundant proteins like keratin in cases of tissue, and serum albumin in cases of serum as well as tissue. So these proteins are very bulky proteins that often fly very prominently in the mass spec and mask your important biomarkers. So actually selecting a contaminant protein is very important while you are analyzing your file, because this will remove any false positive that you might detect in the downstream process. Also, there are certain other things like you can use MS Amanda for having more confident search, and you can also look for PTMs, that is post-translational modifications, using the same workflow. So now how does the data actually look? So you saw that one way of looking at what your data is through the chromatograph. And now finally what you will get out of after running your mass spec sample is an Excel sheet wherein you will have different tabs which will tell you first what protein is there. So for example, this is one of the neuro differential protein that we identified in our study. So you can see similarly there's a list of proteins that we have identified after running the cancer patient samples. Also, we now have to ensure that the data we are getting is of high quality. So how do we do that? We look at the coverage. We also look at the protein FDR confidence. So FDR is the false discovery rate. So it is a statistical value that estimates the number of false positives. One of the common ways of doing that is to have a scrambled database of the human database and then compare the data with the FDR. So in this case, as you can see, it's we have identified proteins with a very high confidence of FDR. So ultimately, our goal is to interpret the information that we have got through the mass spectrometry. And from my study, as you can see, I started off with tumor tissue, performed protein extraction and estimation, ran in the LCMS, and now we can see that we can clearly see some proteins that are very high abundant in one of the grades of tumor, whereas it is less abundant in another grade of tumor. Furthermore, we can map these proteins in different kinds of network, and we can also use several biostatistical tools to see which ones are the important biomarkers from our study. So this now I will hand over the session to Dr. Sanjeeva to answer further queries and brief you more.
So hello everyone, this is a lecture we give by me, David Kilgar, from Nottingham Trent University in the UK, and I'm going to be covering an introduction to Electrospray sources for mass spectrometry. So I suppose in case people haven't come across Nottingham Trent before, this is the UK, here's where we are, about slap bang in the middle. And this is our science campus in Nottingham. Importantly for you guys, you will notice the two massive cricket pitches at the top here, which are very nice, as our campus is next to the River Trent here in the UK. Mass spec though happens down here in the Bank East Cancer Research Centre and in the Rosalind Franklin Analytical Chemistry area. And this is the building plan basically. And this is a photo of my research group this year, the ones that are still here this year. So it's a very international group. You can see we're all from different areas, including Danville from Gujarat. We've got Spanish, Indian, English, French, Scottish, Hungarian, and American all in the group at the same time just now. It's nice to be working with such a diverse group of people. But on to the main topic. So Electrospray is a method of producing ions from solution. And importantly, it produces multiply charged ions. And I guess you'll see in other talks in this session about why or this series about why that's important for tandem mass spectrometry. Electrospray is also a very soft ionization technique, which means that when we make ions by it, we don't put enough energy into the result in instant fragmentation, so we can still see complete molecules. Not usually the molecular ion, because that means something very specific in mass spectrometry. That's the radical cation, the molecule minus one electron. In Electrospray, you'll see later we make what's known as adduct or pseudo-molecular ions. But Electrospray can be used on very, very large molecules. So you may think of large molecules like proteins, and yes, we can do proteins. Of course, we can do peptides and metabolites and things as well. But you can also do Electrospray on extremely large molecules like complete protein complexes or even entire viruses. That we've successfully shown. And it's what we would class as an ambient ionization technique. So it's not traditionally included in the list of ambient ionization techniques, but it still happens at atmospheric pressure outside the mass spectrometer. So in a traditional setup, like you'll see in the image here, we've got an atmospheric pressure region outside the mass spectrometer. This is the lab. Then you've got some metal barrier with a hole in it, and behind that you've got the beginnings of the vacuum stages of the mass spectrometer. And this hole into the mass spectrometer for Electrospray is usually somewhere in the region of 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter in diameter, depending on the instrument, but usually less than 1 millimeter. Sometimes it's in front of the face of the cone, or sometimes it's in the plate. It doesn't really matter. It's more the diameter of the hole and the length of the tube behind the hole that govern the kind of vacuum restriction it's providing to the instrument. And then somewhere in front of this hole we place a needle, a hollow needle, and we raise it to some voltage, usually in positive voltage somewhere between 1.5 to 3 kilovolts. And then we'll pump a solution containing our analytes of interest through that needle using a syringe pump or an LC pump. And the action of the voltage of the liquid will cause it to spray out the tip of the needle towards the mass spectrometer, and we get ions from this very, very fine spray. So if we want to try thinking about exactly what the electrospray process is, the easiest thing is to watch a video. So this is one that I've stolen from YouTube and added some extra labels to. So in the setup here we have a needle, and there's a solution being pumped through the needle. And you can see this crocodile bit supplying a high voltage onto the needle. And in front of the needle we've got this grounded plate here. And at the beginning of the experiment the voltage is very, very low. So there's only a small number of charges going on the liquid at the end of the needle. And as the voltage gets higher and higher and higher, you'll see the droplets, instead of falling down, start to get a force on them which pulls them in this direction towards the plate because they're becoming charged droplets. Although the system isn't, as you see, spraying yet. But in this experiment, they keep increasing the voltage being supplied to the needle. And you'll see that the needle begins to start sort of sputtering a spray. And whilst this is doing some irregular electrospray, you wouldn't want to use this in an ion source because you'd be getting signal, no signal, signal, no signal. You get very irreproducible results and it would be very poor quantification. So if you have the opportunity to view your electrospray, this is not what you want to see. And you'll see as the voltage gets higher, when we eventually get to the stable electrospray, which you want to give you nice readings results. But you can see there is some electrospray going on here, but there's also some very large droplets being produced. And there we go, we're getting close to the stage now where the voltage is high enough to be producing a stable electrospray. There we're getting close to a stable electrospray now. And you also notice exactly how wide the angle of this spray is. How finely divided and evenly distributed the spray is. So in this case, on the side, I've just switched the images around so they match the schematic. This is where you can watch that video on YouTube yourselves. So this was when the voltage was too low and we were getting sort of sputtering periodic spray, which is not what we wanted. This was the nice stable electrospray that we did want when the voltage was high enough. There we are. So here, yeah, we've got this very evenly distributed mist of fine droplets, and so in here, let's have a look at the process of what's actually happening here. So this is the needle that we apply the voltage to, and because the liquid is a conductor, Faraday's law applies, so there's no charges inside the conductor, the charges will all exist on the surface. I'm not showing the charging on the surface of the needle, although it will also be there. Don't touch the electrospray needle when it's on, although all proper mass spectroscopists should have done that once at least, by accident, not deliberately. But I am showing you the charges on the surface of the liquid. So to begin with, we're pumping solution through the needle, but the voltage is high enough to call electrospray, so remember that the droplets just fall under the needle. But nonetheless, they still have charges all over the surface. And then as we increase the voltage, the number of charges, the charge density on that surface will get higher and higher and higher. And because there's a potential difference between this needle and the front of the mass spectrometer, there's an electric potential gradient in this direction, which will pull those charges out. When you get enough charges on the surface of the liquid, it will be pulled out into this cone in front of the instrument. And as we get the charge density higher and higher and higher, it grows into this Taylor cone. And eventually, the force of the charge density on the tip of that cone, the electric potential gradient will be so great that it is greater than the surface tension of the liquid, and so the tip of the cone becomes unstable and droplets stream off and are pulled down the potential gradient towards the mass spectrometer. But because all these droplets are firstly very small, they usually start off in the region of around 1 micron in diameter, but they also are all charged, so they repel each other, and that's what causes us to get this very even, finely distributed mist with a very, very wide spray angle. We need to think about what's happened to the surface area of the liquid. So the reason why the liquid has started spraying is because we tried to put more charges on the surface of this liquid than that surface could maintain at equilibrium under the conditions of the potential field that it's in. So the system has caused the droplets to form because that has massively increased the surface area of the liquid, so it's allowed the system to hold all those extra charges we were trying to put on it. And you way to think about this is you can do this in Excel fairly easily. If you imagine you had a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter cube of water, 1 liter of water, we can measure the surface area of that cube. So it's 10 by 10 on each face, so that's 100 square centimeters on each face, and there's 6 of them, so that's 600 square centimeters for 1 liter of water in a single cube. If we broke that down into 1 centimeter cubes, so 1 centimeter by a centimeter by a centimeter, we have 1,000 of those. Each one of those would have 6 square centimeters, because 1 on each face, so 6 for the whole cube. So we'd have 6 times 1,000, that's 6,000 square centimeters. So the surface area has gone up by an order of magnitude by going from a single cube to 1,000 cubes. If we took each one of those cubes and made them all a millimeter in diameter, we'd go up by another order of magnitude in the surface area, and so on. You can imagine if we had one micron cubes, the surface area of that liquid would have gone up enormously. And because of that, we have this huge surface area, which means that the rate of evaporation of the liquid has gone up enormously too, because the surface area of the liquid is one of the features that governs the rate at which you can evaporate from it. If you make the surface area huge, you can now evaporate very, very much more quickly. So these droplets start to evaporate very quickly, which is what we want. And as each droplet evaporates, of course, it loses solvent, and that loses surface area, but the number of charges on the droplet stays the same. So the charge density on each one of these droplets increases enormously as the surface area decreases, and eventually you'll get to the point where the self-repulsion of charges on the surface of the droplet exceeds the surface tension of the droplet. Now, as the droplet tries to shrink below that, it can't do that because the surface is torn apart. And that limit is known as the Rayleigh limit, and the droplet falling apart as a result of this is called a Coulomb explosion. And the droplets will explode into usually 2 or 3 smaller droplets with yet greater surface area. And each one of those will now evaporate even faster to its own Rayleigh limit and explode into smaller droplets. So this process of evaporating to the Rayleigh limit and exploding into small droplets causes a rapid increase in the evaporation rate, because at each generation the surface area of the liquid has increased and increased and increased, and so the evaporation rate increases in parallel with that. And eventually we produce ions, and there's various different models or the methods by which ions are actually produced. And there was 2 groups in particular who argued about this very heatedly in some conferences that who was correct. It was what's known as the charge residue model and the ion evaporation model. So in the charge residue model, the droplets evaporate until, remember that at each explosion there's a smaller amount of solution in each droplet. So your analyte could be evenly distributed in the liquid, and you subdivide it and subdivide it and subdivide the liquid until you get droplets that only have one potential analyte molecule of interest in each droplet. And then once the solvent evaporates from that, all the charge is left on the molecule itself, and that's the ion you get. The ion evaporation method starts off the same way. The droplets evaporate, and they get smaller and smaller through the Coulomb explosion process until the curvature on the droplet is very, very high. And when the curvature is high, like at the tip of a lightning conductor, if you've got a charged surface with a very, very small radius, it has a very, very high electric field at it because of the high curvature. And the droplet, if you think about it in the Chatelet terms, it gets to a stage where it's got to its Rayleigh limit and it can't shrink anymore because of the surface tension competing with the charge repulsion on the surface. It could split into smaller droplets in order to increase the surface area. Alternatively, it could get rid of some of the charge. And in the ion evaporation method, what it does is effectively it ejects a charged molecule out of the droplet, which takes some of the charge away and therefore reduces that competition between the surface tension and the charge repulsion. And that's how the ion evaporation method works. Because very high field strength effectively sucks ions through the droplet surface out into space. And like I say, there was a lot of competition about which one of these models was correct. It turns out that probably both of them are correct, with one or other dominating depending on the molecule. So for very large molecules, the charge residue model may be the dominant model, so that's over 1,000 daltons. For small molecules like metabolites and whatnot, the ion evaporation model may dominate, although it's likely that both of them exist all the time. It's just usually got one being more important than the other. In practice, of course, does it matter at all? And honestly, I don't think it does. From the point of view of the user, does it matter which one of these models is making your ions as long as it makes ions? I don't think it does. You can get bogged down too much in the detail where it doesn't necessarily improve the quality of the application. And this, I think, is one of those cases. What types of ions do you get from electrospray? Well, you commonly see multiply charged ions, certainly for larger molecules. For small molecules, you simply can't have enough charges over that small volume of space. So actually, the number of charges you can get in a molecule doesn't depend on the size of the molecule. But for large molecules, you'll see multiple charge states. If you're looking for positive ions, you'll tend to see basic sites being protonated. So that's the addition of a proton onto the molecule. So the mass of the ion you'll see will be a proton more than the mass of the neutral molecule. But if you're working with glass or with buffers, you can also commonly see sodium adducts in place of potassium adducts, in place of hydrogen adducts. You can also see potassium adducts or ammonium adducts or really any small cation. If you put in large transition metals, you can see those adducting in as well, particularly if there's ligands in the molecule you're looking at. Commonly, you want to get rid of these other adducts. So if the molecule has a sodium adduct, then we call it a sodiated ion, or potassium or potassiated ion, or an ammoniated ion, in the same way that we call the normal one a protonated ion. So if you've got lots of sodiated or potassiated ions in your result, it does potentially make the result more complex, because if you had an already complex sample and now you've got 4 different sorts of ions there rather than just one, it is going to make the spectrum much more complicated. So under those circumstances, you may choose to use some sort of ion exchange method to get rid of the metal cations and predominantly show the proteinated molecule in that spectrum. In negative mode, you'll tend to see the acidic sites, gas-phase acidic sites, being deprotonated, so the molecule will appear with the loss of a proton, so approximately 1 Dalton lower if it's singly charged. But you can also see adducts in negative mode, for example, adducts of chloride or bromine iodide in the halogens, for example. But you can also see hydrogen phosphate, bicarbonate adducts as well, and particularly if you're looking for things that have been buffered, you can see those. Chlorine ions, of course, are very easy to see, or chloride adduct ions are very easy to see. We usually see the chlorine isotope signature, which is very easy to spot in the negative mode spectrum. If you're looking at whole proteins, you'll find the protein folding affect the charge state you see. So if you're using some physiological buffer conditions, and you're expected to see your protein natively folded, you'll tend to see it in much lower charge states. Simply because the protein folding restricts the access from solution protons onto the basic site within the molecule. If you denature it, you open it out and you expose a far larger number of protonatable sites, and so you'll tend to see much higher charge states on denatured proteins than you would do on listed state protein. Well, in this example here, you can see there still is some, potentially some of the protein is the latent state here, a mixture of latent state, charge state distribution, and the denatured one that are more high charge. And the process we're doing in Electrospray is effectively we're trying to evaporate the solvent. We had a solution of our analyte in a solvent. We want to get rid of the solvent so we can analyze the analyte. So the important step, or the key step in Electrospray, is the evaporation. So what can we do, or what do the instruments do in order to help the droplets evaporate? So as with any liquid, what we can do is we can add heat, we can add gas, and we can add charge to help the droplets evaporate. And if you look on the instrument, you'll commonly find your electrospray source will have a needle, but then outside it, it will have coaxial, what they call spray gas or nebulization gas, which will be heated to quite a high temperature, maybe 200 or 300 degrees centigrade. So we have hot gas heating the liquid in the needle and also bathing the spray plume in high temperature and a high gas flow to aid evaporation. And you'll be able to adjust the voltage on your needle to get a nice stable electrospray. And then additionally, the front of the instrument is usually heated as well, similarly probably to 100 or 200 degrees, maybe even higher, depending on the instrument, and that's again to help the droplets evaporate. But we still may not successfully evaporate all droplets, and we want to stop uncharged solvent or solution getting into the instrument. So the instruments usually have additional features in order to try and prevent that problem. One of the most common is this counterflow or curtain gas, so that will also be heated and is set to blow out from the instrument against the direction you want the ions to go in. And that's making benefit of the mobility effect, that the ions have a charge and are being pulled by the electric field towards the instrument. The droplets also have a charge, but they have a much bigger surface area, so the gas will blow the large droplets away, and yet the electric field will allow the ions to enter the instrument. And then within the instrument, there's various methods that are used to try and stop droplets that even get that far getting further into the instrument. The most common methods of those are what we call occluded paths. So, for example, in the Z-spray system, the spray has to go through one orifice and then turn a couple of corners and go through a second orifice before it gets further into the mass spectrometer. And at each one of those turns, the momentum of larger droplets will cause them to move out of the laminar gas flow, which is pulling ions through the instrument. And so the large droplets are pumped away, and only ions can follow this sinuous path into the instrument. Other instruments will use a post, and again, the idea here is the droplets will just splatter on the post, and ions will be able to move around it into the instrument. There are some companies that will use bent RF-only quadrupoles, so the ions will follow this path around the quadrupole into the mass spectrometer, where the droplets will continue straight on and be lost in the sample path. Some use heat capillaries and offset orifices, so this is like a Rupert source, where the ions pass down this long hot capillary, regarding the droplets pass down this long hot capillary, which give them extra time to evaporate, and then on exiting that, droplets will splatter on the side of this cone, and only ions will pass through into the instrument. I don't know if you can actually call me, so I wasn't expecting that. Apologies. And then finally, of course, although I've shown you so far the sprayer pointing directly at the orifice, in most instruments for electrospray, this isn't the case. They actually move the sprayer so that it sprays orthogonal, or at least at some angle to the orifice. So the main axis of the droplets is passing across the front of the instrument, and only small ions and very small droplets that are close to being fully evaporated pass into the instrument themselves. And if we look at schematics of real instruments, so here's some Orbitrap schematics showing how these features are used. So we can see we have an angled sprayer passing through a hot capillary in this case, and then behind that we have this bent quadrupole, so the ions will follow the path here into the instrument, and the droplets will continue straight on, hit the wall, and then be pumped away. That's on a Q exactive. On this older elite style instrument, again you see angled sprayer, hot capillary. In this case it uses a combination of a bent quadrupole. You can see it better in the schematic down here. So the ions will follow that bent quadrupole round and into the instrument, where the droplets will be this post, which is designed to fit into the bent quadrupole before moving further into the Orbitrap. In other instruments, we've got water Z-spray system. You see with these two cones and angles to each other, causing the ions to pass through a sinuous path into the instrument. And then there's an additional thing. If you look at these transfer optics in water instruments, this is known as a step wave. So it's two ion guides that are connected to each other. Only ions can make this transition from the lower ion guide to the higher one into the instrument. Large molecules, as they're large droplets, pass straight on to the lower one and then get pumped away at the bottom here. So there's additional separation of ions from droplets in the water systems. And all of these are to try and help get these parts of the instrument dirty. The performance will inevitably suffer as soon as we start to coat the surfaces of the electrodes further through a mass spectrometer with organic molecules, from evaporating solution. There's a partner technique to electrospray known as nanospray. All the ionization processes are identical to electrospray. Again, it forms a very fine spray from a solution. In fact, what we were looking at earlier on in that video was actually nanospray, not electrospray. Nanospray systems don't have coaxial spray gas, for example. They usually use a smaller bore needle with diameters much less than a micron. Commonly these can be made out of drawn glass. You can draw them yourselves if you have a laser cooler or a capillary cooler. But people these days will probably also commonly buy the nanospray sources in commercially. Nanospray has a much lower flow rate than electrospray, of the order of nanoliters per minute as opposed to microliters per minute in normal electrospray. And that means that if you can do fraction collection, for example, from an LC system, a few microliters would only last you a few minutes if you were directed using that by electrospray, but that will be many hours. And the nanospray will really give you a chance to optimize, for example, MS conditions. There are some other benefits. Nanospray has better salt tolerance, but there are some disbenefits. So without this additional heated spray gas, it's actually much more difficult to optimize a spray from a nanospray. And that does cause a problem if you're trying to do any large cohort experiments, so any sort of quantification of possible proteomics, for example. It's difficult to get repeatable results across long periods of time because of the difficulty in optimizing nanospray performance. And on that basis, most labs that I know are going back from the sort of theoretically more technologically advanced nanospray back to full-size, what we call mega spray, normal electrospray, simply because it is much more simple to routinely get robust and repeatable results from that. And that's very important for clinical analysis. But a homemade nanospray can be extremely simple, so I just wanted to show you this to show you exactly how simple these systems are. And this is what I built for the University of Warwick. So this is on the Bruker Fourier transform ion cyclotron resonance mass spec of Warwick. You can see we have the plate here with the orifice into the mass spectrometer. Behind that there's a long capillary. This one actually goes into an orthogonal ion funnel at the back, which is how they get rid of large droplets that get in. But in front of the system, you can see we've got a simple magnetic mount and a post, and this thing on top of the post is a method for holding optical fibers and aligning them with laser beams. So you can see it's got a couple of screw threads on here, which allow us to adjust the X and Y position of an optical fiber to couple with a laser beam. All we've done is we put a PTFE rod in there that we've drilled with a hole so that we can just stuff the glass capillary into it to hold it in front of the instrument, and then we can use the thumb screws to adjust the position to line it up with the orifice. You can't see the liquid in there, but there is liquid in there. From that, a platinum wire comes out of the capillary, is wrapped around this nut, and then this crocodile clip just supplies the voltage onto it. The way the Bruker system is set up, actually, the needle is grounded, and the front of the instrument is a high voltage, which is the opposite that you normally see. One other thing to be of interest here is that black thing at the bottom there. That's just a pipette tip stuffed into the interlock switch. So most commercial electrospray sources will have some interlock switch somewhere in them, which is designed to cut the voltage when the door is open to prevent people getting unexpected electric shocks. But if you're wanting to make your own ion sources or to modify your electrospray sources, you need to find out where the interlock is on your system and feed it so that the voltages can still be turned on when the source is open. But it really is that simple. If we zoom in and see the picture here, you can actually probably just faintly see the surface of the liquid in there. You can't see the wire, you can just see the end of the crocodile bit there and there, the other end is down here. And it is as simple as that. We got better performance out of this very, very simple setup than out of the commercial Bruker nanospray setup, which is what we went there to build here. So sometimes it is worth modifying your ion source if you want to see more interesting and useful things. But anyway, that's it for this brief introduction to electrospray. So your sample will be dissolved in some kind of solution, which needs to be made of solvents that can evaporate. So commonly water, methanol, acetonitrile, some combination of those, possibly with the addition of some formic acid to help you make positive ions. You'll be spraying this through a needle, which will be at relatively high potential compared to the front of the instrument. And the surface charging of the liquid will result in the production of this fine mist of droplets. Those droplets will evaporate until they get to the Rayleigh limit, and then they'll cool off, explode, producing ever smaller droplets, and eventually all the solvent will evaporate, leaving you with analyzed ions. On most systems, there'll be some various methods for improving the rate of evaporation. So you may have coaxial heated spray gas, or counterflow dry gas, or heated parts of the instrument. Don't touch them. Remember, they are very hot when the instrument is working. And there are a lot of people that have burns on touching the ion source. And there will be various methods of separating the ions from residual solvent droplets. So your sprayer will want to be angled. You may have a Z-spray system, or posts, or bent motorpoles, or offset orifices, or heated capillaries, or something. But it is worthwhile learning how your instrument works, because these parts of the instruments are the bits that you will have to take apart and clean regularly if you don't want them to get coated. And finally, I got to acknowledge funding sources. So the European Commission, through the Top Spec project, funded the development of the software that we write in my group, and we have funding from Waters to develop areas in the development of triple and Qtol technology. And thank you very much. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find a horrible picture of me at the NTU staff page, which makes me look like some kind of criminal we wouldn't want to meet in a dark night. Or more usefully, if you go to www.kilgaralab.com, you can find some useful teaching resources on there, and also contact details for me. And thank you very much.